Well, hello there to all my passionate private practice owners. My name is Gerda, and you are listening to the Private Practice Success Podcast. And this is episode number 24. Today, I want to talk to you about a topic that is really close to my heart. And that is the topic of dealing with rejection as a private practice owner. Now, if you are a human being on this earth, you have most certainly experienced rejection in your life. I don't think any of us have been able to get where we are today without experiencing some level of rejection. And I'm sure you'll agree with me that it's not a pleasant emotion. It is an emotion that really, really hurts. And therefore, we need to look at it, because I can tell you now that if you do not know how to deal with rejection in business, that this will become one of the biggest barriers to you creating the business success that you desire. I know this because I see it each and every day. I am in a very privileged position where I get to talk to practice owners every day of the week. Maybe not Saturdays and Sundays, but in the week. And I see this happening all the time, that they experience rejection. And as a result of that rejection, they make certain decisions that has consequences that is of huge detriment to their business. So let's dive into this really important topic. If you've been on the receiving end of rejection as a practice owner, then I want to invite you to join me in this really important conversation today. We are going to start this conversation by looking at some examples of what rejection could look like in the business of allied health private practice. So I'm just going to share 2 or 3 of the most common ones that I come across on a week-to-week basis. The first example I'm going to use is of a practice owner that decides to expand their team. So they excitedly write up their job ad. They find out where to put it up. They pay some money probably to put it on a job ad platform. Maybe they're sharing it across their social media pages, and then they wait. And what happens very often is one of 2 things. Cricket. So there's no applications. And with every passing day, they get more and more discouraged. Or, wow, there's an email that came through to say that you've got a job application, and you excitedly log in and you look, who is this? And it's an unsuitable application. That excitement to let down is a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and I'm sure you've experienced that. And then what happens is they start to go down this spiral of thinking of, nobody wants to work for me. So we personalize it, right? So there must be something wrong with my job ad. Maybe somebody else's job ad sounds better. Maybe I'm not offering the perks and the benefits that other people are. Maybe I need to offer more money. Or maybe people just don't like my practice, or they don't like what we do. And this can be a rabbit hole of negative and self-critical thinking that happens as a result. And a lot of times what I see happen is that people then just stop advertising. I can't tell you how many people I've spoken with over the last couple of weeks that tell me they've got a recruitment problem. And I ask, okay, well, when last did you put a job ad out there or go on a recruitment campaign? They tell me 18 months, 12 months ago, because nobody's applying. It's like, okay, that is a consequence. And you have now just gone 12 months, 18 months, however long, not recruiting, which means as a business owner, you are leaving money on the table because you could have had a clinician earning revenue and income therefore for your business. But also, you have left impact on the table, because without that additional clinician, you can't service additional clients. So as a helping professional, you have left your impact on the table by reacting to that rejection in the way that you did. So that is one example. And another one is, let's say you actually did get bites to your job ad, and maybe you interviewed and you found somebody and you want to bring them on board. You write up your job offer, you send it to them, and it's like, this is going to be amazing. You can already see this person really fitting in with the culture of the team. You really like them as a person. You think you're going to work really well together, and you've put in a lot of effort into writing up that job offer, putting a package together, and then you get a no to your job offer. And 9 out of 10 times, it leaves the practice owner absolutely devastated. And if you're not a practice owner listening to this, you might be thinking, what the hell? Why? But until you're in that position and in the shoes of a practice owner, it's really hard to understand it. And I know logically, we know it's not personal, but you are still a human being fulfilling that role. And when you have a business, it's like your baby. It is personal to the practice owner. So this is a very common example. And the consequence of no's to job offers that I have seen when people tell me their stories is they go, okay, so I must have done something wrong here. And then what they start to do to try and fix their perception of why this person said no, a lot of times without even asking. I always encourage the practice owners that I consult, coach, and mentor to ask for feedback. Not to pressure people for feedback, but just to ask, hey, I was really excited about you coming on board. I totally understand and respect that you've made a decision not to, but it would be really helpful to me to know, is there any specific reason why this job offer wasn't suitable at the end of the day, or anything else that we could have done that could have gotten you over the line to join our business? Just something like that. And they don't have to answer you. If they don't want to, they don't have to. I find a lot of clinicians out there are so courteous. They give you lovely feedback. 9 out of 10 times, they will tell you it wasn't about the offer. They might have just decided to actually pursue something in public mental health, or they've just decided to stay where they are now. It can be a lot of other external reasons. But because we don't ask for that feedback, what people often do is they go, it must be the job offer. And then what they do is they go, okay, it's probably the money. So now next time I'm going to just add 10K to it, or $20,000 on top of it. And before you know it, this practice owner has hired clinicians and or contractors where the margins are so thin because they are literally overpaying their clinicians that their business is on a knife's edge. And I can tell you now without a doubt that 9 out of 10 people that come to talk to me wanting business consulting and support, their business is on a knife edge, which is why they should be talking to me. I want them to talk to me. That's my job, is to help them fix that. But there are so many out there. And do you know how stressful that is? Knowing that your business is on a knife's edge, but not knowing what the alternative is, thinking that this is the only way to run an allied health business, because if I don't pay these packages or offer these specific benefits or whatever else it is that you've popped in there, that I won't get anyone. And people land in that position, not overnight, it's over a couple of months. It's after various different experiences of rejection, not really looking at the numbers, not really looking at the margins, not understanding those things, not talking to clinicians about things, that they get to that place. And once you are there, you can most certainly get back to where you should be, but it's a hard journey back to getting to the margins that any old business should just have, because you are a business. And I know very often allied health business owners think that they are special, that we are different. We are not. Yes, there are certain regulations that we have under APRA, especially when it comes to advertising, to how we market, to, if you were to offer competitions or discounts or specials and that type of stuff. And you need to know that stuff like the back of your hand, right? So yes, there are limitations, but day to day running your business when it comes to those growth accelerators and those indicators of what it means to have a successful business, it's exactly the same as any other service business. It's exactly the same as any other talent-driven business. So we have what is referred to as a talent-driven business. So your psychologist, your occupational therapist, your speech pathologist, your social workers, your dietitians, your insert whatever your allied health discipline is, they are talented people, right? And yes, we should be offering them great remuneration packages, which is why you need to know how to write what I like to refer to as an irresistible job offer. Do you think people that work with me at my practice or my business coaching clients don't have teams? They've got humongous teams. It is because we know how to write an irresistible job offer. We don't have to cut off the blood supply of our businesses, which is money, in order to recruit and retain talent. So you need to have a strategy around that. And I've just noticed that I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but it felt relevant to share that because I want you to know that this is not an either or situation when it comes to rejection of your job offers. It's not I either give people everything they want or I don't have anyone. You can have both if you know how to do it. All right, so let's leave that there. That is the no's to your job offer, which lands people in trouble so many times. It really hurts me when I just think about it. The other very common example of rejection as a private practice owner is when somebody resigns. Quick side note. First and foremost, thank you so very much for listening and hence supporting this podcast. Second, if you are a group practice owner, please know that it is my mission to help you go from overwhelmed, overworked, and most probably underpaid to fully empowered and financially thriving. Helping you build a practice you can't stop smiling about is more than just a tagline in my world. It is what I do. And guess what? You can have it too. So if you know that you want more from your business, if you know that you deserve more from your business, then today is the day I invite you to reach out. In the show notes, you will find a link to a super short triage form. Pop in your details. I will personally go through your responses and will get back to you ASAP to let you know how I can help. And if I can't, I'll point you in the right direction. Don't put your dreams on the back burner any longer. The sooner you start, the sooner I can help you get there. Now back to the episode. It happens. And the shorter the person has been with your team, the worse the rejection is. Like, I've spoken to people that have had clinicians leave after 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. It's like, what is that period? So I can tell you right now, the average is around about 2 years. If a clinician stays at your business for more than 2 years, you are doing really well. And again, I can go into a whole tangent, a whole different discussion as to where this number comes from, why this number is there. Now, if you're listening to this and you go, no, my people stay for 5 years, amazing. All right. That is absolutely amazing. But I would also ask you to consider, do they stay for that period and you have your margins? Or are you on the brink of burnout and collapsing of stress because you do not know whether you are going to be able to pay wages next week, Thursday? when wages are due. If that is you, I'm not impressed with your team retention numbers. Okay. That doesn't impress me because anybody can do that. But why would you want to? Why do you want to put yourself at risk of burnout? That's not going to serve those people. And I can tell you, that's only going to last so long. And you know what happens to people that are on that knife's edge the whole time, business owners? It impacts their relationships, their marriage. And I've seen that happen time and time again as well. So I don't want that. Like, the criteria for having a successful business is not only one marker of team retention. And if my team stays for more than 2 years, I've got this. No, that's one tiny marker. To have a successful business, a business that somebody else is going to want to buy off you one day, that's not going to be the reason they buy your business. There is a range of markers that needs to hit certain levels in order for you to have a business that you can sell one day. Not for $50,000. Anybody can sell a business for that. You know, I often hear people talk about like, I've sold my business. Well, tell me for how much before I'm going to tell you whether I'm actually impressed by the fact that you sold your business. And unless I know what you've sold it for, I'm not going to be impressed with that because anybody can sell it for a shit price. Another consequence of having not necessarily a lot of resignations, but even just one or two in quick succession, especially if people haven't stayed the 2 years plus, is that risk of reputational damage. And again, if you're not a practice owner, you might be thinking, well, that's not my problem. That's the practice owner's problem. Yes, it is their problem. And that's why I'm talking about this, because it's real, that reputational damage. And it's even harder and so frustrating to deal with it when it's not due to your business, when it's not your fault as the business owner. When somebody leaves because their husband has now been transferred in their job and now they need to move from Brisbane to Adelaide, that's not your fault. It's also not their fault. It just happened. Okay. And those things, life events, leads to early resignations all the time. But unless you are able to communicate to your referring community why that is happening, they don't know. And people generally tend to assume negative stuff. It's just like that sticky big type of mindset of, I wonder what's going on there. This person only stayed for 3 months. That can't be good. So I also always encourage practice owners to talk to clinicians who resigns unexpectedly or earlier than expected, to just have a conversation with them and say, hey, are you happy for us to just let clients know that you're actually moving to Adelaide so they understand what it is that's happening? And 9 out of 10 times the clinician goes, yes. And it's always about finding that balance, right? Getting that permission from your clinician as to what it is that they're happy to share with the clients and or referrers, and then getting clarity as to what we will and won't share with the clients. Because I think, it's just basic respect telling a client why somebody is moving on. Now, I'm sure you're thinking there, well, if it's not a good reason, like I had to fire someone, I maybe don't want to tell that. That's a different kettle of fish, right? That is where, as a professional business owner, we want to protect the reputation of that person as well. I will never share a negative reason for somebody leaving with a client. And that's one we also want to have that conversation with the clinician and saying, things didn't work out. Maybe you are terminating somebody after their probation period has come to an end because you've realized that this is not going to work out. Then we just talk about what is the messaging that we're going to give to the clients. And it might be as simple as that this person have decided to pursue other interests or other opportunities. And that's okay. But I do feel it's really important to tell clients and referrers what is happening in order to assist in managing potential reputational damage. We are helping professionals, and we know that communication is like the cornerstone of being able to help. And I know that we need to do more effective communication in the running of our business as well. Okay, So those are three common examples of rejection that business owners experience. Now, I'm sure you can think of lots of other examples as well, but those are the really big ones. And what tends to happen if a practice owner has a lot of these type of events is ultimately they just start to retract into their shells. It's like the turtle that goes, I can't deal with this anymore. And they just pull their feet and their head into the shell. And it's like, I'm just going to stay here and pretend that I don't exist, that there's nothing else out there. And whilst they're in their shell and they totally isolated, feeling safe, maybe more from a physical perspective, that mental self-talk starts to kick in. Self-talk such as, I really suck at this thing called running a business. I'm just like failing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I have no business calling myself a business owner. Maybe I should just, close up shop, go find a job at public mental health, get onto the freaking gravy train. Or maybe I should just go back to solo private practice because I obviously do not know what the hell I'm doing. Sound familiar? And then what do? We keep playing small. So if this did sound familiar, what is the answer then? I'm going to share three things with you here. The first is that you need to accept that yes, it does feel personal when there is rejection that occurs in your business, because it is. It is personal to you as the business owner. But it's also your job to process that. And you need to process that shit at home with your hubby, with your wife, with your significant other, maybe with your own psychologist, maybe with a clinical supervisor, maybe with a trusted peer or a mentor. You're going to feel it. You're going to be there because you're a human. But it's your job to process it and process it in your personal space that you've created for yourself and not bring that into your interactions with your team. Second thing is you need to accept that it is not personal because to the other party, it isn't. The person not applying for your job, it's not personal for them. The person that doesn't apply for your job ad, they're not applying because of you or your business. They're not applying because of them and their own things and their preferences and requirements and locations and all of that stuff. Same thing with the person that doesn't accept your job offer. Same thing with the person that resigns. They are doing what's in their best interest. And maybe so should you when you're making these decisions. Okay? So it's not personal. And thirdly, you need to remember that each of us as individuals, irrespective of what your role is in the business, each of us are responsible for setting our own boundaries. If somebody says that I can't do this, that is them setting their boundaries. If somebody says that I can't accept this role, that is them setting their boundaries. And it's our job to respect that. Yes, we can ask for feedback in a respectful manner, but they get to set their boundaries. Similarly, you need to set your boundaries. And that is where a lot of practice owners fall down. They don't. They go, okay, I'll just, pay more money even though I don't have it. Maybe I'll just work an extra day of clinical work in order to pay for that additional amount of money that I now need to pay this person to get them over the line. I can tell you a lot of times when you do stuff like that, it doesn't last anyway. It doesn't work out because people didn't join your business for the right reasons. So it's your job to set your boundaries. And I know you probably know this logically. And I'm going to now speak particularly to the psychologists that's business owners. Because I'm a psychologist and I'm a business owner. We find it probably harder than any other allied health discipline. And we are the people that help clinical clients every day learn how to set boundaries. But for some reason, when we need to do it ourselves, it's so hard. I find that psychologists particularly are extremely conflict avoidant. And I'm not judging us as psychologists. I love us. Like, majority of the people I work with are psychology business owners. But it's like our level of empathy for other people is so high that it actually comes back to bite us, in that we want to protect people. And because we want to protect them, we don't set boundaries, and that then comes back onto us. So I come back to the point that I'm making here, that each of us are responsible for our own boundaries. And when you make a decision not to set a boundary, that's on you. And you can't blame somebody else when they set a boundary for themselves. We want to respect that. And I want you to take that as permission that it's okay for you to have boundaries. I'm not saying don't be flexible. And this is the thing, I see that business owners really struggle with that balance between consistency and flexibility, knowing when to consistently set a certain boundary and then knowing what flexibility in that situation could look like. And it's because we don't know that we get stuck, that we make the wrong decisions. And it takes time to learn that skill, but it's vital if you want to build a long-term sustainable business. Allow me to add an additional little bonus thought here for you, because I also see this all the time. And that is that 99.9% of practice owners totally accept rejection from clients. Okay? So if a client calls up and they don't book an initial appointment, that's perfectly fine. If a client calls up asking for bulk billing and you charge a private fee and the client decides to go elsewhere, we are perfectly fine with it. We are perfectly fine accepting and encouraging client choice and client control. But for some reason, when it comes to accepting that for our team, it becomes really personal. And for some reason, when we want to give ourselves choice and control, we find that really hard to do. So we almost have this different set of rules for clients, team, and ourselves. So for this fourth thought, I just want you to reflect on that and ask yourself, what is that all about? Yes, you've got a different relationship with your clients than you have with your team. But at the end of the day, it's still choice, it's still control and its boundaries. And I just think that the business owner, the team, the clients, everybody should have choice and control. It's by having that you get to design the life that you want, get to design the business that you want. And ultimately, when you give yourself the same level of choice and control that you give to your team and your clients, guess what will need to happen? Now you will need to take ownership of your decisions. And maybe that's the scary part, having to take that ownership. But I want to encourage you to step into it. I want to encourage you to also accept, you know what? Rejection is just a part of running a business. And when you are running a service business in comparison to a product-based business, you're going to have so much more rejection because you're working with people, right? If you just think about your own family of procreation, how many fights happen in your family of procreation? The people that you love the most, you even fight with them. So people that aren't binded to you by blood or love or family ties, they're allowed to say no to you. Any person is allowed to say no. But so are you. But you also need to have clarity as to what is your boundaries. And again, that's where a lot of practice owners fall down. Quite a couple of episodes ago, I spoke about the 10 rules of business. And I want to encourage you, if you've not listened to that episode, to go and search for it on the podcast. Because that, for example, is really important to help you set boundaries in terms of knowing what is my 10 rules of running my business. And you can change those rules over time, but you need to know what it is, because if in every situation you need to think about it again and make a decision, a lot of times we're just too tired and we make the wrong decision, or we make an emotionally driven decision. And I'm not saying emotions is bad. I think the best decisions are made with both your head and your heart and your gut. But when we are feeling hurt emotionally, we tend to make the wrong decisions. And that's where your rules of business comes in really handy. Alrighty, we're going to leave it at that for today. But before I go, I want to say this. If you feel like you are currently in that turtle position and you are hiding and you are playing it small, I want to really encourage you to go, you know what? This has been long enough. It is time. It is time to stick my head out again. Because the one thing I can assure you is that if you trust that you're making the right decisions, if you trust that you've got boundaries that aligns to your values and to how you want to run your business, that even if rejection happens, and I should probably say when rejection happens, because it will, you will be okay. And take it from me, rejection gets easier over time. You come to learn that, it is okay. It doesn't stop hurting, but it doesn't have to have the impact it had in the early days. Now, when something happens that is rejection, even in my business, in my group private practice, and in my business called Private Practice Success Australia, it's not to that level where I can't focus on anything else for the next 24 hours. I'm now able to note it, observe it, and deal with it within a very short space of time because I'm now practiced at it. But unless you become practiced, you won't be able to manage it. So slowly but surely allow yourself to experience rejection. Come back to this episode if it happens, and before you know it, you won't be immune to it, but it won't become a barrier to your private practice success, to your ability to help more people in better and more effective ways. So remember that vision. Why are you doing what you're doing? What are you here to do as a helping profession? I'm going to bet it's about changing lives. I'm going to bet it's about making a difference in the lives of highly vulnerable people. And that might mean that you need to risk rejection in your business, but I can tell you it is worth it. It is worth it. Alrighty. Thank you so very much for listening. As always, remember that I am here to help you build a practice you can't stop smiling about.